I didn't expect anyone to recognize me when I rolled into the tiny mountain town of Briar Hollow just after sunset, mostly because I didn't recognize it myself. Nothing about the place felt familiar except for a strange clenching deep in my chest, as if someone had tied a thread around my heart years ago and was finally pulling it back home. But as I stepped out of my car and onto the cracked pavement in front of the old general store, a man with silver hair and a patched denim jacket walked straight toward me with tears in his eyes and said, "Robin, welcome back," with the same tone you'd use when greeting a long-lost son who'd survived a war. I laughed awkwardly, the way I always did when someone mistook me for an old friend. But there was something different in his eyes and ache, a longing damned as I tried to explain that we'd never met. He just shook his head with a sad smile and said, "You've forgotten again, haven't you?" My throat tightened because I'd heard those words before in another life, in another struggle, back when my mind wasn't the reliable storyteller I wanted it to be. And suddenly the town felt smaller, quieter, almost expectant. The man placed a trembling hand on my shoulder and whispered, "Don't worry, it'll come back." But instead of comfort, the words sent a cold ripple across my spine, and I felt the urge to run back to my car. Leave this place behind before it swallowed me whole, but I didn't. Maybe it was the way the mountains towered around the town like silent guardians. Or maybe it was the flickering golden lights in the windows that made Briar Hollow feel like a place frozen in time, preserved like a memory I should have had but didn't. Or maybe, if I was honest, it was because I'd been drifting for months, sleeping in motels, eating alone, talking to the ghosts in my head, more than two real people, hoping to outrun the heaviness that settled on me after my last breakdown. And something deep inside whispered that if I left now, I'd never stop running. So I stayed. I asked the man what he meant, but before he could answer, a group of townspeople emerged from the cafe across the street, voices rising in shock and disbelief as they hurried toward me. A woman with auburn hair threw her arms around me, sobbing into my shirt, telling me she prayed every day for my return. A teenage boy looked at me like I was a legend he'd grown up hearing stories about. An elderly woman cupped my face in her hands and said, "My sweet boy, you came back to us." And the strangest part, every one of them said my name exactly the same way, as if they were quoting a memory I didn't share. I tried to laugh it off and explained that they were mistaken, that I wasn't who they thought I was. But each time the words left my mouth, their faces fell into sorrow rather than confusion. The auburn-haired woman, her name was Margaret. I later learned grabbed my hands tightly and whispered, "It's the illness. Robin, don't let it win again." And something about the way she said again gnawed at me, like it was a puzzle piece I should have been holding all along. When I insisted I wasn't from Briar Hollow, that I'd never stepped foot here in my life, the teenage boy quietly said, "But you saved us," and the entire crowd bowed their heads the way people do at funerals or prayer circles. I felt my breathing go shallow. Save them from what? And why did the way they stared at me feel more like worship than reunion? I tried to leave, I swear I did, but every time I turned to walk away, someone gently guided me back with a softness that made refusal feel cruel. "Come inside," Margaret said, wiping her tears. "You must be exhausted." And against all logic, I followed her into the cafe. As soon as I stepped inside, the smell of cinnamon and warm bread wrapped around me like a childhood blanket, and for a brief moment, a sliver of memory flickered an image of me sitting at a table in the corner, laughing, scribbling something on a napkin, then vanished so quickly it left me disoriented. Maybe I was tired. Maybe the long drive had messed with my sense of reality. Or maybe, just maybe, there was a truth here I didn't want to face. Margaret poured me tea the way someone does when they know exactly how you like it to sugars. No lemon, and my stomach dropped because that was how I liked it. You belong here, she whispered softly. You always have. I asked her how she supposedly knew me, and her smile trembled. She opened her mouth to answer, but the lights flickered. Every head in the cafe snapped toward the ceiling. The air grew tense, heavy, wrong. The elderly woman near the window whispered, "Not again." Someone else muttered, "It senses him." Before I could ask what that meant, the lights cut out completely. The room plunged into a silence so sharp it made my ears ring. And then, a sound emerged from somewhere deep beneath the floorboards. A low, guttural hum. Almost alive, almost aware, Margaret grabbed my arm. "Robin, don't be afraid. It won't hurt you. Not this time." I didn't have time to ask what she meant before the lights snapped back on. Everyone stared at me with a mixture of hope and fear, as if my reaction alone determined whether they'd survive the night. I forced a shaky smile, pretending I wasn't seconds away from running screaming into the mountains. "What the hell was that?" I asked. No one answered. Instead, Margaret whispered, "Robin, you came back because it's waking again." My skin crawled. "What is?" She leaned in, her face pale. "The same thing you fought before you disappeared." My pulse pounded in my throat. "That's impossible," I said. "I've never been here. I've never fought anything." The teenage boy stepped forward, his voice barely audible. "You don't remember saving us?" "No," I said. "You don't remember the night you died?" My blood froze before I could respond. The hum beneath the floorboard pulsed again louder, this time almost as if reacting to my presence. Every cup on every table rattled softly. A mural on the wall one depicting the town seemed to warp, the painted shadows stretching into shapes that didn't belong to any artist's brush. Through the window, I saw something impossible, the streetlights outside flickering in a synchronized rhythm, like a heartbeat, and in that moment, something inside me cracked open, just a sliver, just enough to let a memory slip through, a storm, children screaming, me holding something burning in my hands, and a voice whispering, "We choose the ones who can hear us." I gasped. Margaret squeezed my hand. "It's starting," she whispered. "You have to remember before it finds you again, what finds me." I whispered. The entire room fell silent. Every face turned toward me at once. And in a single trembling voice, Margaret answered, "The thing you died fighting." The moment Margaret whispered those words, "The thing you died fighting," something inside me twisted so violently it felt like a physical hand had reached into my chest and wrenched my heart sideways. Because even though logic screamed that what she said was impossible, a deeper, older part of me trembled with a recognition I didn't want to claim. As if some buried truth had been waiting 8 long years for the right crack in my mind to seep through. And now that crack was splitting wide open. The humming beneath the floorboards grew louder, pulsing like a heartbeat. No, not a heartbeat. My heart beat down with every throb. Flashes poured into my head so fast I staggered backward and nearly fell. A storm tearing across Briar Hollow. Children crying. Men shouting. Margaret clutching my hand as we ran toward the church. And a column of swirling black smoke rising from the ground like something alive. I gasped and grabbed the table for support. But the memories kept coming, uninvited and unstoppable, peeling back the layers of forgetting like fragile wallpaper until I finally collapsed into a chair, shaking as if my body were trying to reject the truth, forcing its way back inside me. I blinked hard, and when I opened my eyes, everyone in the cafe was standing, not talking, not breathing, just standing, watching me with a terrifying stillness that made my skin crawl. "How?" I whispered, my voice breaking. "How did I die?" No one answered at first. Their silence vibrated, heavy, deliberate, as though speaking the truth carried its own consequences. Then the teenage boy Evan stepped forward with tears in his eyes. "You died saving us," he whispered. The night it woke, I stared at him, throat tightening. What woke? His gaze flicked toward the floor, toward the humming beneath us. "The Hollow One," he said. The name alone sent a cold shudder through me. A name my brain insisted it had heard before, even though I knew for certain I'd never spoken it in my life. Or maybe I had. Maybe in the life they claimed I'd forgotten. I pressed a trembling hand to my forehead, trying to steady myself, but the humming began to deepen, shifting tones like something adjusting itself, focusing because of me. The cafe windows fogged over. The lights flickered again. And then everything went quiet. Not silent, quiet. A dead, suffocating quiet that felt like all the sound in the world had been sucked into a vacuum. Margaret knelt beside me, gripping my shoulders as though anchoring me to the earth. "Robin," she whispered urgently, "you cannot panic. If you panic, it senses it. If you remember too fast, it senses that too." My breath hitched. "What is it?" Her eyes glistened with grief I didn't understand. "It's older than this town, older than the mountain. It feeds on memories, reshapes them, devours the pieces it wants, and leaves you with whatever makes you easiest to control." I swallowed hard, so it erased me. She shook her head slowly. "No, Robin, you erased yourself." The words struck like a blow. Why the hell would I do that? Her lips trembled. "Because it showed you something so unbearable, so devastating, that you couldn't live with it." I wanted to scream. I wanted to shove the table, flip every chair, break every window until someone gave me a straight answer. But before I could speak, the humming beneath our feet, so stronger, vibrating through my bones. Every cup rattled. The lights flared, and then the floorboards cracked open. A wave of cold, black mist spilled upward like smoke rising from a furnace, except it didn't disperse, it moved. It curled and twisted toward me like a living shadow, and even though it didn't have a face, I felt its attention, its hunger, focusing entirely on me. My heart thundered against my ribs as I stumbled backward. "What does it want?" I shouted. Evan's voice was barely audible. "You." The black mist surged, and Margaret grabbed my wrist with shocking strength. "Run," she whispered. "Run." We bolted through the back door as the mist swarmed the cafe, swallowing every corner of the room in seconds. I sprinted into the night air, lungs burning, legs screaming. But the mist followed, pouring through cracks in the walls, drifting low along the ground like a tide determined to drown the shore. Margaret dragged me down an alleyway, her breaths ragged. "Where are we going?" I gasped. "Somewhere it can't enter," she whispered. "Somewhere you built." We reached the edge of town and approached an old church rundown, nearly collapsing, but with a faint golden glow seeping from the shattered stained glass windows. My pulse stuttered. I didn't know how, but something deep inside me recognized this church, the same way one recognizes the scent of a childhood home long forgotten. "This is where you died," Margaret whispered. The words stopped me cold. My hands trembled. "I don't want to go in there." She squeezed my arm. "You must." Before I could protest, the black mist poured into the street behind us, rolling like a storm surge. It was close, too close. We had no choice but to dive inside. The moment I crossed the threshold, a burst of warmth spread through my chest, and the black mist slammed into an invisible barrier at the doorway, unable to enter. It shrieked not with sound, but with a vibration that rattled the wooden beams. I collapsed to my knees, gasping as images flickered in my head. Children hiding beneath pews. Me shouting for everyone to take cover. A circle of glowing symbols carved into the floor. Fire, so much fire, and a monstrous shape rising from below, made of smoke and teeth and memory. I gripped my skull with both hands. "Stop it," I cried. But the memories only grew stronger, unfolding like a film reel from a forgotten lifetime. I saw myself, but younger, stronger, standing where I knelt now, holding a lantern etched with runes, facing the swirling shadow creature that towered over the congregation. And then I saw the truth I had buried so deeply, even the hollow. One couldn't find it until now. I did die here, but only because I chose to. I handed the lantern to a terrified child. I whispered, "No one else will go." I stepped into the swirling darkness, and I let it consume me. My vision snapped back to the present with a violent jolt. I gasped, clutching the pew. My body shook uncontrollably. I sacrificed myself. Margaret nodded through tears. To seal it away, to save us. My breath quivered. "But how am I alive?" Her face crumpled. "Because the Hollow One knew your value. It fed on you. It kept your memories, your soul, your essence suspended until it needed you again." My stomach lurched. Needed me for what? She looked toward the cracked window, where the black mist pressed against the barrier like a starving animal, to open the seal. My pulse roared. "I would never." "You already did," she whispered. The floor beneath us glowed faintly. My eyes widened as I recognized the symbols, the same ones from my memory now, flickering with a weak, dying light. The seal wasn't simply breaking. It was dissolving, because I was standing on it. "Robin," Margaret whispered, voice trembling, "your return woke it. Your presence weakens the seal. It wants your memories back so it can become whole." My chest tightened. "What memories?" She stepped closer, placing a gentle hand on my cheek. "The night you died, you didn't just sacrifice yourself. You took something from it. Something it wants more than anything." My hands shook. "What did I take?" She swallowed. "Your daughter." The world fell away. "My what?" I croaked. "You had a daughter, Robin, 8 years old, bright, laughing. She could hear the Hollow One, just like you. She was meant to be the next chosen." I staggered backward, gripping the pew until my knuckles went white. "No," I whispered. I don't have a daughter." Tears streamed down Margaret's face. "You erased her from yourself so the Hollow One couldn't find her. You hid her inside your memory. You buried her so deeply that even you believed she never existed." My breath shattered. My heart cracked open. "Where is she?" Margaret squeezed my hands. "Where only you can reach. But if you don't remember soon, The Hollow One will break the seal entirely and devour every memory in Briar Hollow. Above us, the church rafters groaned. The barrier at the doorway flickered. The black mist surged forward, cracking the protective line of light. The Hollow One was getting stronger, faster. Hungry, I knelt on the floor, palms pressed to the glowing symbols, and closed my eyes. Deep inside my mind, past the smoke and fear and broken pieces of myself, I felt something small, something warm, a giggle. A tiny hand in mine, a voice whispering, "Daddy, look at the fireflies." I gasped. Tears poured down my face. I had a daughter. I lost a daughter. I hid a daughter. My eyes snapped open. "I remember her name," I whispered. Margaret leaned forward desperately. "Say it, Robin. Say IT." But before I could speak, before the final memory could surface, the church doors burst open in a violent explosion of shadow, splintering wood and shattering light, and the Hollow One surged inside, no longer blocked by the dying seal. Its voice, if it could be called a voice, owed through the church in a bone-shaking chorus of 1,000 stolen memories. Give her back.